This morning, the SBC issued two moderate risks for our upcoming severe weather event that I talked about in my last video. For day 2, this is for March 14th, Pi Day, we have a very large 10% hatch tornado risk region with a 45% wind risk as well. This is pushing that moderate risk. You can see again a very large portion of hatched probabilities here for a great portion of Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, parts of the mid South here, Tennessee, parts of Mississippi and Alabama, and we have a large also hatched hail region here. 30% probabilities at maximum near Missouri and Illinois border. In day 3, we also have another big risk. This is a moderate risk with a 45% chance of significant severe weather over parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana, as well as another very large 30% region over a large portion of the South. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at the synoptic setup for this event. I also have for day 2 a very large fire risk with extreme probabilities over parts of Oklahoma and Texas, as well as a very large, again, day 3 setup here, very large day 3 fire risk as well, likely going to also be extremely critical. So I'm going to be looking at the synoptics for this event, everything going on about it, and just some updates as we have got more models now that are not just the GFS and European model. Let's go to our current weather. First of all, I talked in our last video a lot about this setup, but just as an overview, we have this small shortwave trough that's moving on this morning off of parts of the south here. This has caused a little bit of severe weather probabilities. We can look at our day 1 outlook here, just a little bit of a marginal risk right now. But this is actually going to be a slight inhibiting factor to our setup, and we can see how this has progressed. So you can see our moisture here, our moisture content. Some of this gets pushed out, but one of the big inhibiting factors we talked about in the last video was that moisture might really get pushed out by this shortwave trough. However, you can see here on our WRAP model, this moisture stays up here in parts of Tennessee and Kentucky here. We have some 60s dew points up near high 50s, some 60s dew points lingering around here for tomorrow. This means we are going to get a little bit more moisture in the Midwest. You can see here, we look down south, you can see we have some 60s here in the southern regions of this sector here, and again, Tennessee, Kentucky, and parts of Illinois, as well as some pretty high 50s also being able to move north, even though for some reason the WRAP does take them away throughout the day, which is interesting. Likely due to mixing, actually. I'm fairly certain that's just going to be mixing upwards in the atmosphere there. But that does mean we've seen a little bit of an uptrend since my last video. However, there is still a big question mark regarding that moisture. Again, you can see the Midwest, you can see our dew points here. 50s, mid 50s over much of the region. But looking at our temperature throughout the day, you'll see that we ended up hitting temperatures of mid 70s, and the moisture content just is not great. Relative humidity definitely struggling. You're about 50% most of this region. More south, we do have higher relative humidity, 75% up here, 70s here. So this is indicating we have a lot better moisture more south still, but we are seeing a little bit more northward extent to this moisture. And I'll talk about this in a second, but you'll see overnight that does increase, and that's why we have more of an overnight threat with this setup. So again, let's look at the synoptics here. 500 millibars, you can see we have a very large little shortwave trough for Friday. This is 12Z on Friday. And you'll see we get this very deepening low here. Very strong jet streak associated with this, over 100 knots of flow reaching parts of Missouri throughout the day there. Very strong flow, very heavily forced setup. 700 millibars. It looks like we might have a ripple or two. One right here maybe. Maybe a few back in this part of the flow as well, possible for Saturday. 850 millibars. Let's look at our temperature. We have pretty warm air, but also some colder air at 850, which is interesting. It's kind of a mixture of warm and cold air advection here, actually, but the main thing is we have a very strong lower level jet, 0-0Z, and you can see this it just continues to ramp up over parts of the Midwest, in particular Illinois as well. Also lots of moisture, 850 millibars. Not nearly as much of a moisture problem here as we saw at the surface. But you can see again a lot more moisture here, 10 degrees Celsius in some portions here. So plenty of moisture, 850 millibars, and that won't be as inhibiting of a factor. And you'll see here a very strong surface low. So here's the initialization at 9Z this morning. And looking forward to Friday night, you'll see this surface low really begins to deepen right off Colorado, right off the Rockies, and very quickly cyclogenesis here. 15Z, you can see we already have a 980 millibar close low. Let's zoom in a little bit here. and very intense low. And you can see how strong these winds are, and that's actually a big reason why we have a fire weather setup for this day. This is that critical, or sorry, extreme risk here. If you look at portions here, let's get the HRRR, let's look at the wind gusts. You can see how intense these wind gusts are. You can see how dry this air is. Relative humidities are in and the low 20s, below 20, a lot of this region is. So very dry air, but also very windy. Look at wind gusts here, upwards of 50 knots at some portions, not thunderstorm related either. Just remember that severe thunderstorm wind gusts are usually around 55 knots, and we have some regions here saying 60 in the Texas Panhandle. There definitely is this fire risk for any associated wildfires going on. It would definitely be a big issue there just because of how dry this air will be. You'll see regions out in the Midwest as well, just very strong wind gusts being possible on Friday. In Illinois, portions here 45 knots over some regions. 30s are this whole purple region is all 30s. 20s widespread even further away. It's just a very strong surface low, and this will be causing some pretty severe or pretty intense wind gusts. And then let's look at our actual convection. Here's our cape here real quick. I want to look at this. Again, you see, general thunderstorms today possible down south. We go forward to Friday. You get this very large area of instability. I'm a little bit questioning on this. I've seen this pop up on a few little models, but I haven't seen any storms on any of the cams quite yet because of it. So I'll be monitoring this. It does seem this random plume of instability, possibly due to better moisture returns right there. The wrap shows something similar, but a little bit more displaced. But let's go forward with our wrap run here. You can see this maybe some morning instability or afternoon instability out there in Illinois, but you'll see as the nighttime hour goes on, you do get some more instability down there. Doesn't look very impressive. The HRRR shows is a little bit better, I'd say. Yeah, you can see very forced, although not nearly as much instability as we expected, really. The main thing is this is going to be a very forced setup, and once this this portion, this little cold front, dry line, I call it a cold front. Once this cold front comes through, you're going to get really quick storm development. You can see by the intense temperature gradients there. Let's go to our actual reflectivity now. You can see right around 22Z, you get some little bit of storm development in Missouri, and very quickly, extremely linear, which makes sense. We saw the upper level winds. They're very much unidirectional. If I just take some random sounding ahead of this cold front right here, you'll see that we have very unidirectional winds out ahead of that. Yeah, you can see our profile. The winds are immediately off the chart. Yeah, you can see this part of the did not show up. This part of the SQT here, very much in this direction, very quickly. So we'll have very quick, extremely fast movement to a linear setup there. And then you can see our simulated reflectivity. Definitely some very strong winds. I'm a little questionable about this contours for this one. I do think our risk will extend a little bit more into this region. I'd be a little bit skeptical on the southern extent of this. The southern extent of this 45% wind risk down in Arkansas and portions down here, this seems more tornadic and possibly discrete in nature. But the cams have not been showing too much with this setup as of now. We can look in portions of Missouri here. You get a little bit of storm development, but you can see it's a lot more discrete. Still wind driven, but a little bit more discrete than we saw up north in Iowa. I can't get a very good sector for this. Let's try this floater right here. Some of these storms, yeah, either way, it's not working out the best for me. But you can see that we do get a little more discrete storms down here. Just in nature, they don't move as fast. They're a little bit more, they're better on the orientation. You can see we have much more east moving storms down here rather than the basically parallel to the boundary up here. So that's a very clear difference, and we have some more instability possible down there. Service-based cape is definitely more extreme down here, so that looks more to be more of the tornadic risk zone. And obviously there's that southern extent of the risk area as well, and this is due to better moisture. Talked about in my last video, this area has much better thermodynamics than the north. If we saw in our sounding, you can see there's a lot more drier air here, and these will be more elevated storms. However, one thing I did want to mention is D-Cape will be in play here. Our D-Cape in this sounding is about 600, so not super impressive, but considering the cape this sounding is currently giving us a maximum about 700, that means a lot of this instability is being reused straight downwards as strong winds going, to the ground and all that. So these storms might have some pretty intense downdrafts, and that's really where this massive moderate risk for wind damage comes in. Again, we talked about the south here as well. We have this surface low, more of a glancing blow above at 500 millibars, not as strong 500 millibar flow down here. But we do have the surface low and more southerly flow, as well as the moisture content is much, much better than in the north. You'll see here again, kind of a dry line setting up right here. You can see we have a very tight moisture gradient there. Some storms that could form out over here in the open warm sector. Again, a little bit of a narrow warm sector, but down south in Louisiana and parts of Mississippi, definitely more open. You can see definitely finding a little bit of drier air at 850 or 700 here. A very shallow moist layer, but you do have a little bit of potential for severe weather down here as well. We did go a little bit south in this extent. So again, we saw that the drier air. Let's look at our moisture here. It's about 700 millibars. Let's get relative humidities now. You have a lot of drier air. It seems like they're fighting down here. Northern extents could have better dynamics. Let's look at this sounding. A little bit more removed from the moisture there, but likely a little bit better. Yeah, so we still have this little bit of dry air be fighting in the south. However, that's where the Saturday setup really comes in. So let's delete my soundings. Let's go to our Saturday setup. Let's look at our risk area again. This is mostly focusing on Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Like I said in my last video, they did extend this a little bit more to the southwest in parts of Louisiana. So the risk initially was in a region somewhere in this vicinity, more so northern Alabama. This is since shifted more to the southwest. Parts of Louisiana are being shown here. Yeah, the 45% hatched, very large area for significant severe weather. Let's look at our wrap run. We can't go very far in these, but you can see the morning of, we have 500 millibars. Here's our vorticity, actually. I didn't mean to click that, but it's good showing a little bit of vorticity behind this, helping to fuel a little bit of surface cyclogenesis likely. Regarding, we still have this cyclone up here moving on to Ontario. However, in the south here, we do have this very large moist air mass. As that cold front kind of stalls, cold front dry line kind of stalls out here, we do a lot of moisture return. So we still have all this southerly flow because of the pressure gradient orientation. So you end up with a lot of moistening over a very broad area, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, even reaching into parts, 50s dew points all the way up into Michigan. So a very large area of moisture, with our more significant moisture being still relegated to the Gulf, but Mississippi as a whole, it has 60 degrees dew points here. Alabama, very, very much so as well. Tennessee, 60s getting up there. So again, lots of moisture down here. That's a really big factor. We're going to move to the NAM model now so I can look at a better synoptic model. Move forward with the time here. You can see this moisture continues to go up. We get a little bit of a surface low, secondary surface low down here. We can see how much broader the contours are here. Kind of a secondary surface low. Again, the NAM, like I said in my last video, the GFS kind of did the same thing. This very strange looking like mess. You can see how messy all these contours are. GFS did it last time as well, so I'm a little bit confused about that still. But you'll see at 21Z, I can even move my NAM nest model here. Moisture is very much in place. Temperatures in the 70s. We'll go back to the NAM so you can see upper level dynamics. More of this 500 millibar flow moves into the region throughout the day. See right there, there it comes. Enhanced flow. 850 millibars. You get that lower level jet really churning. Look at that. Over, wow, 75 knots of flow. The purples are the 70s. So very intense 850 millibar flow. And you can even see throughout the day there, this red is over 60 knots. So pretty enhanced flow all over the place here. Very intense flow throughout much of this area. And let's take some soundings. That's about all I can do at this point as well. Our cams, oh, NAM Nest, let's get out here now. So that's perfect. We can get a little bit of a hint here at NAM Nest. You can see we get some morning storms along this front, but we do have some open warm sector storms. If there's any confluence bands that could lead to plenty of discrete activity. The NAM Nest does not really show much of this discrete activity though, which is interesting. But it does show a pretty well-defined convergence band, I believe right here, especially down in the Gulf. So likely a convergence band, oopsie, somewhere here. Let's see how that aligns with our activity. Yeah, there's our convergence band right here. So a little bit of convergence band there, maybe out ahead here. So we could have some convergence bands. Really depends also on the 700 millibar flow. If we have a little shortwave, could really help initiate discrete storms out here. So this could be a very potent setup because of that as well. And let's take a sounding because that's what I love to do. Let's take one here let's do one in Louisiana. One in Mississippi. This is 21Z, and then we'll do one in Alabama. And we'll kind of compare the three. So here is our Louisiana profile. You can see very indicative of severe weather. Significant tornado parameter nearing 7. We can see our photograph of lots of good veering, strong lower level jet to enhance and enlarge that photograph. SRH values nearing 400. 0 to 1 shear, 40 knots. So very intense. That could also be an inhibiting factor. I do want to say that. So with this extreme shear, right? Like not the surface, but 0 to 1 shear of 40 knots could be it could be devastating to any updrafts trying to organize. So we are going to have multiple updrafts to be able to support each other and block off that shear to start discrete storm development. But with the the amount of storms that will likely be forced up, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. You can see definitely a very good moist layer up to 850 millibars, a little bit of dry air encroaching, but that will help with downdrafts. And then you can, and also the lapse rate here is a little better because of that, and a pretty good instability. You can see how fat this instability is. 3 cape of 157. I mean, this is a very clear severe weather setup. Moving forward to Mississippi, this is definitely, it looks a little bit convectively contaminated here, but either way, you can see the moisture's messed up. But you can see the wind profile as well. Very looping photograph there. SRH also near 400. 40 knots of shear. 0 to 3 SRH at 600 nearly. 100 joules per kilogram of 3 cape as well. Did I look at the sounding? No, here's our Alabama sounding. Again, pretty moist the surface still. Good. I mean, to each of these is very indicative of good severe weather possibilities. Let's move forward to 0Z here. Let's go out here in Alabama, and I'll do one more. And Mississippi is likely going to be the hot spot. Looking at our risk zone here. Portions. Let's look at central Mississippi as well. I really love my soundings. You can really see how this enhanced. Oh my goodness, literally off the charts. This photograph is very impressive for severe weather as well, specifically tornadoes. Again, I do want to mention that is the main risk zone with this. I wouldn't be surprised in the morning to see this moderate risk be because of 15% tornado probabilities. I wouldn't be surprised by that. The SPC has mentioned significant tornadoes. That is the risk, is significant tornadoes. They've talked a lot about the shear profiles. Yeah, this is very much significant tornadoes, but there's all other hazards are also at play here. But tornadoes definitely seems to be the main risk. Look at this sounding. This is the one I looked at earlier as well. This is pretty incredible. This is after night, basically right at nightfall here, and you'll see all of that 850 millibar jet we talked about really begins to churn. You can see because our 1 kilometer mark is literally off the charts somewhere. I can't even see it on this photograph. So very impressive. Instability is also in there. Really, you can just see by our photographs and SKUTs, this is a very potent setup down here. And if we do get lots of discrete storm development, it's not going to be a good day for the south. Yeah, storms go on into the nighttime hours, and then the next day on day 4, that will be on the 16th. Let's go back and make outlooks. Here's day 4. You can see we have this 15% slight risk, likely just going to be a wind day like East Coast often sees after these big severe weather days. But yeah, really pretty potent setup going on. So this is dangerous, and we have to pay attention to this and watch it closely. Again, you'll see the progression of our trough. We get this really intense low, closed low there, moves off to Ontario, but then a really large amplitude trough there. Let me get back to pencil. Really large amplitude trough. You can really see it here, spanning much of the United States. This is really very cold temperatures associated with it. That'll help thermodynamics. The main thing is this for the southeast. This could give a little bit of glancing forcing, which won't lead to really widespread severe weather necessarily, and it could, but it's not going to lead to what our setup looks like for Friday, where we see just an intense linear system right out ahead of that low, which won't have any discrete activity, mostly just QLCS, as we really saw in those cams. Even though the cam models are not necessarily showing much like the the reflectivity very well down here in the south. The synoptics are definitely there. This is definitely a very dangerous setup because we have a moderate risk on day 3. So this is something to watch out for. And I will continue to monitor this as we get closer to the event. I mean, I'll be checking the weather a lot, seeing if I can see any storms. A very dangerous day. 2 days coming up. So please keep yourself safe if you're in the risk zones. Again, this also includes fire for regions in Texas. Just a very potent trough, very intense, and definitely one for the record books. So, again, that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.